Welcome, Pewter Report readers, listeners, and viewers to the latest edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of Pewter Report. We're excited. Why? It's a Monday. We love Mondays because we have roll call at 4:20 coming up. That's always fun. That's where we get to find out where you are watching and listening to podcast from, what's your location, and we'll get those up on the chat stream so we can see where you guys are tuning in from. But more than that, it's 17 days away from the NFL draft, and that's always exciting. I'm Scott Reynolds, your host today. Along with me is Pewter Report's Bailey Adams. Bailey, how we doing today?
Doing good, Scott. How are you?
Good. We're going to be talking about our draft crushes. I listed a bunch of mine in my SR's Fab 5 on Friday. Only going to pick a couple. We're going to go 3 offense and 3 defense, in addition to finding out 3 guys that you like on offense and 3 on defense. We've kind of narrowed it down to players that really could be drafted by the Buccaneers, players they're interested in or would be really good fits.
Yeah.
And there's some interesting names to go off of. So we're excited about that. You know what? Is this team going to draft a quarterback? Well, Jason Licht said they're going to bring in like 5 quarterbacks for pre-draft visits. And we just put up a story on pewterreport.com not too long ago that Will Levis from Kentucky is the latest quarterback to make a visit to Tampa Bay. I think that's coming up later this week. So Will Levis, now that marks the 3rd quarterback, Bailey, aside from Hendon Hooker and Clayton Tune. Those are the other guys that the Buccaneers have brought in for some pre-draft visits. But I want to start off the show by getting your thoughts on Will Levis. If he's there at 19, is this team going to pull the trigger?
I still think no. I think maybe they're doing their due diligence, and I guess there would be a reason why they're doing their due diligence, just in case he slips. First of all, I don't think he's going to slip that far to 19.
I agree.
I think he'll be long gone before then. But I suppose if he's there and they feel like they're not too confident in Kyle Trask. I think we've talked about it plenty on this podcast and also on pewterreport.com about making this a 3-man quarterback race and the drawbacks for that. I don't see it happening, but it is the one of these quarterbacks. It seems like more so than Anthony Richardson now. He's the one that you kind of see fall a little bit further in the first round, maybe to where the Bucs are picking. So I think probably doing their research on him and getting an idea, but I would be very, very surprised if that was a pick.
Yeah, and I think too, it's important to note, right, when we talk about the quarterback race, there's a couple factors, right? Now, some of you might say, okay, well, he's better than Kyle Trask, right? So go ahead and draft him instead. Then there's the Hendon Hooker situation, right? Long reported about a month ago that Hendon Hooker, who's one of my draft crushes, by the way, I love the kid. I think he's a fantastic prospect. He's coming in for a visit as well. And the problem with Hendon Hooker is with that knee injury, probably not going to be ready for training camp. And that's going to essentially take him out of the race. I would almost rather them, if they're going to draft a quarterback, draft Hendon Hooker. The problem is they'd have to do it probably in the first round or trade up to get him in the second round, because I think he probably falls to the second round. Some people have got a first round grade on him, but he's not going to be there for rookie minicamp. He's not going to be there for OTAs or maybe training camp. He's not going to be in the preseason games coming off that ACL injury. So if that's the case, you pretty much have to redshirt the guy for this year. And Bailey, when you're looking at the reps needed to determine a starter, it's one thing to split the reps just about 50-50. It's not even 50-50. It's what it is. It's like 45-45. Then you have 10 reps for your third string quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. But it's impossible to make it a 3-way race and to give everybody a true fair shot, because now you're divvying up the reps like 33 apiece rather than 45, right? So that's 12% fewer reps every single day in practice. And now you've got to allot one preseason game each for a quarterback if it's a 3-way race between a rookie, whether it's Hendon Hooker, whether it's Will Levis, or whether it's, either one of those guys, then Kyle Trask, then Baker Mayfield. Oh, and by the way, it's a brand new offense.
Yeah.
So you got to find out who the starter is and then get him ready for week 1. I just don't see a 3-way race happening in it being good process this year for the Bucs.
I don't either. And on that Hendon Hooker point too, if you're essentially redshirting him, what does happen if Kyle Trask proves to be the guy they drafted him to be, or if Baker Mayfield, has a resurgence this year and sets himself up for another contract? Like, what happens then? Because then you have a quarterback you probably spent an early second round pick on, and just because of his draft status, are you going to say, all right, well, he's going to be our guy, not knowing one if he's going to come back from that ACL 100%. There's also the age factor, as you mentioned. So it's kind of a dicey situation either way, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, that I wouldn't be surprised if they draft a quarterback, but really out of the three, it makes probably the most sense, because with pressing needs elsewhere, right, for it to be a guy like Clayton Tune, where he's more of a young developmental guy. And then we assume that Baker Mayfield, because of his experience, will beat out Kyle Trask. And if that does happen, then you have another guy kind of waiting in the wings. Maybe you're hedging your bets a little bit on Kyle Trask and say, okay, well, we'll see how Baker Mayfield does, but at least we have another young kind of gun in the hopper, so to speak, and we'll see how Clayton Tune develops. Maybe he becomes the guy that Kyle Trask couldn't, but we'll see, right? It's going to be interesting training camp battle for sure. It's been a long time since I've seen a training camp battle in Tampa at the quarterback positions, especially with Jameis Winston for 5 years as the starter, and then you've got Tom Brady succeeding him. So it's been a long time. Maybe Josh McCown, Mike Glennon would probably be the last one, but I mean, they paid all that money to McCown back in 2014, so you knew he was going to be the guy. But what we did know is now here's the visit tracker for the top 30 players. The teams can bring in these draft prospects on top 30 visits. They're called top 30 because they get 30 of them. They can bring in 30 players on campus for a visit. And you see the quarterbacks there. They've brought in 3 out of the 5 they're going to bring in that we know of. They could have brought those other quarterbacks in, but we're not sure who they are yet. But Hendon Hooker, Will Levis, and Clayton Tune. The running back that they brought in is Rashawn Johnson. Offensive line, Darnell Wright from Tennessee. That's Hendon Hooker's right tackle. Chris Murray at Oklahoma. He played guard, but he'll be a center in the NFL. And then defensive line, Adetomiwa Adebaware from Northwestern, and Carl Brooks from Bowling Green. Outside linebackers, Nolan Smith and B.J. Ojulari. And then the news that we broke Saturday at Pewter Report, Julius Brents from my alma mater, Kansas State, coming in for a top 30 visit. So that's 11 players now? Yeah, 11. So we'll see if we can identify the other 19 before the draft, Bailey, but so far we got 19.
We've got 19 to identify in 17 days, you said, I think. So I think we can do it. I think we can get there.
Let's do it. Well, let's get to some interesting news when it comes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I thought Josh Capo had a very good story on yesterday on Happy Easter too, by the way, for everyone who celebrates Easter. Hopefully you had a good Sunday with your family. But a very interesting story about Shaq Barrett and the fact that the Bucs seem to be really hedging their bets because they have not extended his contract, or I should say even restructured his contract to free up some cap money. And he's got a massive contract. I think he and Mike Evans are over $20 million cap hits this year, the 2 highest cap hit players. But Bailey, it seems that their reluctance to do that and push any more dead money into future years. And with this guy turning 31, coming off of a torn Achilles, some of the data that Josh Capo was talking about in that article was quite telling, that it's very difficult to come back from a torn Achilles and be very productive, especially as you get older in your football career.
Yeah, and when you have a guy like Shaq Barrett who relies so much on that get off the snap, that is going to be a really big question for the Bucs, and for him to answer is whether or not he can get back to where he was before and what he relies on so heavily with the age. I know we talked a little bit with Todd Bowles in Indianapolis at the Combine. He said he's not worried about his age because Brady played till 45. I don't really subscribe to the same thinking, but he's a different position, different skill set, all that. But yeah, he's getting up there in age, and the Achilles thing, we've talked about it a little bit. Matt and I did last week on the podcast talking about players who need to bounce back. And Barrett is one of the big question marks because of that Achilles injury. It's a little bit tougher to come back from these days than even an ACL. And it really can diminish a player's speed and their quickness off the snap. And if he doesn't have that, then he becomes, very limited, I think.
And it's such a kind of a weird injury. I've never experienced it myself. I've kind of strained my Achilles a little bit, and you kind of, at least for me, and again, I've never torn it completely, but I've strained it a little bit to where you walk so gingerly that you don't want it to pop, right? And so I remember there were a couple times when in 2020, when OJ Howard was coming back from his torn Achilles, actually in 2021, he tore it in 2020. In 2021, when he would be blocking, he would kind of like pick up that foot a little bit and almost kind of block on one leg at times because he was just so afraid to plant and get in there. And some of that's just a mental thing, right? Because you're going to be cleared medically to play, but it's just sometimes the mental hurdle, and that can slow you down. And so, yeah, this team is concerned. And that's why they brought in guys like Nolan Smith and B.J. Ojulari as pass rushers for top 30 visits. And Bailey, when you and I were there at the NFL Scouting Combine, I think they talked with more outside linebacker / edge rushers in terms of formal visits than they did any other position.
Yeah, I think so. And I think you're seeing that. And that's another thing we've talked about. But Shaq Barrett, they're not sure, I don't think. They're 100% sure he's coming back the way he was. And then when you look beyond Shaq Barrett, it's JTS who, there's still questions about him. So you've got your top two guys, your two starters who are, I think, written in pretty much Sharpie at this point, at least to start the season. You got questions about both of them. So, yeah, it makes sense that they're going to bring some of these guys in or talk to them at the Combine the way they did and probably bring in some more on those top 30 visits, because I would imagine, as Brandon says here, an edge rusher in the second round, maybe even the first round, because that is a glaring need, even if Shaq Barrett, I think, comes back from, and even plays to most of what he was before. I think he's still getting up there in age. His contract is running out. Are they going to, renew that contract or extend him after this season anyway? You don't really know. So I think you have to start building that room. I know they re-signed Anthony Nelson to a multi-year deal, but it's still one of those things where you're kind of having to refresh that room. It started a little bit by, parting ways with JPP after 2021. And then, it could continue into the future when Shaq Barrett is no longer on the roster. So they've really got to start rebuilding that room. And I don't think there's a better time to start than now.
I agree. Kieran says, hope Anton Harrison and Will McDonald are among the top 30 visits. Those are some of my draft crushes right there. I mean, I love both those players. That would be a fantastic 1-2 punch right there for the Buccaneers if they were able to draft those two players, I think. Al Bundy says Barrett's too old. There's no need to restructure him because they want to let him go after 2023. Very well could be the points there. I think that's, I mean, listen, unless Shaq Barrett comes back with guns blazing and acts like nothing's wrong and he has a fantastic season, but we don't even know if he's going to be able to participate in training camp, right? I mean, I think Josh's article talked about it's just about a 12-month injury. And I know it was less than 12 months for OJ Howard because he was able to go to training camp in 2021 and he got hurt in September. So that was more like, probably a 10-month recovery for him, maybe even 9. So we'll see what the timetable is for Shaq Barrett and all of that. Tony Saylor says Light needs to copy the Eagles roster model, load up on the trenches. Well, believe it or not, I think Jason Light's done a pretty good job at that. If you look at where he's spent a lot of draft capital, the offensive line has been one of those positions where he is not shy about using premium picks, right? You look at this current roster, Bailey, and you've got Tristan Wirfs, who's a first rounder. They just released Donovan Smith, but he was the left tackle since 2015. Second round pick, Ali Marpet, second round pick, Alex Kappa, third round pick, Robert Hainsey, third round pick, Luke Gedeke, second round pick. We're talking about drafting an offensive tackle, right? Either in the first or second round. So I think he has done a very good job of allocating draft capital on the offensive line. Then you look at the defensive line, if we're going to include the outside linebacker position, because that's essentially on the line in the Bucs 3-4 defense, even though they play at the 4-man front in a lot of nickel packages. Vita Vea, right? Logan Hall, who was their first pick last year at the top of the second round. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, we talk about them drafting an outside linebacker in the first or second round this year. That's going to be another premium pick. So I think he's done a pretty good job of using draft capital. He's also used trades. He traded for Jason Pierre-Paul back in 2019, 2018,
18, 17. I can't even remember at this point.
Yeah. That was a 3rd round pick he used to get JPP. So, I trust me, Jason Licht knows all about trench play. I mean, he is going to continue to fortify those areas. They're not done yet by any means. And Todd Bowles was a little frosty when I asked him, and he wasn't frosty at me, but just at the results. When I said, Todd, if I would have gone back to training camp and told you that your leading sacker this year would have been your nose tackle, Vita Vea, with 6.5 sacks, what would you have thought? He's like, well, I wouldn't have believed you, right? Every single year he's been a defensive coordinator in a 3-4 scheme. He's had, he's had an outside linebacker be the leading sacker, and that's what it's supposed to be in this defense.
Yeah, you could tell his disappointment in the answer, because I think even toward the end of the answer, he was like, yeah, I mean, we're obviously happy with the way Vita played, but I think he kind of gave him his kudos, but also was like, we need more from the outside linebackers. And I think even before that press conference at the end of the season, he talked about needing more sack production out of those outside linebackers and edge rushers. So I would think that's a very early priority in the draft.
Yep. So let's do this fun little thing that we do every Monday. Bailey, you're a part of it today. It's called Roll Call. Where are you at, Pewter people? Bailey, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you feel like having a little rant today?
Sure. Why not?
Okay. All right. That's good. What we do now is this is the time where all you Pewter people that are participating in the chat, tell us your location. Where are you watching or listening to the show from today? And we'll put it up on the screen while Bailey goes off on a tangent for about a minute or two. And we appreciate everybody tuning in to any of the Pewter Report podcasts, but especially on Mondays because we do roll call and it's fun. And you know what? We're going to do roll call too the first night of the draft. How about that? That'll be fun for everyone who's tuning into our draft show. We are going to be doing a live 3-day draft show that we do every single year. It'll be right here on a Pewter Report TV channel. So stay tuned for that. That'll be April 26th, Bailey? Thursday night? 26th?
27th, I think.
27th. Okay, 27th. There we go.
Yeah, 27th.
All right, Bailey. So here we go. This is your first rant on roll call here. So take it away.
All right, let's rant about the safety position because I think we're going to talk about these draft crushes in a minute. There's a guy I left off because I don't necessarily think he's probably a fit anymore at the number 19 pick, but he's one of my draft crushes. It's Brian Branch. And so I'm not going to tell you why they should draft Brian Branch at 19 because at this point, I don't think it's a possibility. But I think that safety room has to be a priority. Like we talked about, the edge rushers has to be a priority early on. Safety also is going to have to be, I think, a day 2 selection if it's not going to be day 1 because of what they have at the position. They have Antoine Winfield Jr., who set himself up really, really nicely so far for a second contract. I think that's going to be a priority going forward, maybe next offseason, or have to be next offseason, I guess. But he's done really well. But behind him, they have now Ryan Neal, who they've signed to a 1-year deal only. I'm really, really high on the signing. I'm really, really, I feel really good about that. If he comes in and has to be a starter day 1, I think he probably will be and should be. But again, he's a 1-year commitment. You don't know what you're going to get beyond this year. And behind those two, you have Nolan Turner, who I think had a really good training camp last offseason or last summer. But we don't know anything beyond him having a nice training camp, a nice preseason. So it's going to be a room that they have to fill out, whether that is bringing back Logan Ryan on a 1-year deal. But I think some of this is going to have to be future oriented, which is why it's going to be early in the draft. You're going to maybe not necessarily talk about Brian Branch on day 1 anymore, unless you're trading down and collecting more picks and can still get him, because I still like the player a lot. I like what he does in the slot.
Right.
I like the production and overall playmaking ability he showed at Alabama. But I don't know whether it's probably not going to be number 19 anymore, but I think day 2 is probably going to be that sweet.
Yeah, it sounds to me like offensive tackle, edge rusher, either first or second round, and then I think that third position could very well be safety. I agree with you, or like a what we call a slot safety or a slot corner, someone to really man that, because that is the other vacant spot right now is that starting slot position where, when it was Sean Murphy-Bunting, he was a cornerback. Last year was Antoine Winfield, he was a safety. So we appreciate everybody helping us out with roll call. That was fun. Want to pass some condolences on to Matt Matera today. He's usually on here with Monday. His pop-up passed away today. Not today, but I think over the weekend. But he's not on the show today. Mourning the loss of his 90-year-old pop-up. So we're sending our thoughts and prayers and love to Matt and the Matera family. And we're gonna carry on and have a fun show with our draft crushes. So Bailey, I don't know about you, but I'm gonna start off with my top picks first.
Okay.
My top picks are Fantasy Vibe.
All right.
Orange sparkling, and one of my absolute favorite kinds of flavors in the afternoon, the sparkling lemon lime. Now, of course, I'm talking about Celsius, not my draft crushes. These are my Celsius crushes. Maybe I should have said that at the top. But listen, folks, if you're looking for a fantastic tasting energy drink that's going to give you the energy without the sugar crash, well, you found it in Celsius, the official energy drink of Pewter Report. Why? Because there's no sugar in Celsius. That's what makes it awesome. Is some of these other energy drinks, they have sugar in them, and then you get that rush of energy, and 3 or 4 hours later, boom, you're crashing hard. And that's no fun because you want the energy to sustain you. I have never, ever crashed off of a Celsius. It's absolutely fantastic. The only thing better than the energy you get from Celsius is the flavor. Holy smokes, folks, whether it's that new Fantasy Vibe or the original vibes, the Arctic Vibe, the Peach Vibe, the Tropical Vibe, or any of the tremendous Celsius flavors. And they have a new flavor that's coming out. I was on the call with Celsius today. I'm not going to say what it is today, but it's coming out and it sounds incredibly awesome. It's a new Vibe flavor. So stay tuned for that, folks. But where can you get Celsius? Well, there's 2 places that I can point in your direction. Number one, you can order it on Amazon and do the subscribe and save, which I recommend. You can get Celsius delivered to your door on a certain schedule that you set, and you can save money by doing that. Or if you want to just grab some cans and pick out some flavors and see which ones you like, well, you can do that too. Go to Celsius.com, click on the store locator, and then you will find all of these different places that will pop up: health and fitness stores, convenience stores, grocery stores, bodegas, as Matt Matera would say. So just make sure that you're grabbing a Celsius. Celsius, the official energy drink of Pewter Report.
Well, I know you said that those aren't your draft crushes, but I mean, you know better than I do, but those are going to have to be some of your draft crushes to get us through that weekend, because we're going to need them.
Oh, yeah. And Celsius, they're going to be sending us a buku amount of product for that weekend too. So we will be energized all weekend long. Yeah, it's a fun show, but it's very taxing. We're going to be live, folks. If you haven't seen our draft shows that we do, it's Thursday from 7 p.m., which is an hour before the draft, 7 p.m. till midnight. And then on Friday, which is day 2 of the draft starts at 7, but we go at 6. So that's from 6 p.m. till about midnight. And then Saturday, it starts at noon. That's what time the day 3 of the draft starts. We'll be on at 11 a.m. because we get an early jump on things. So we'll be on from 11 a.m. till like 5 o'clock or whenever the Bucs make their last pick. So,
yeah.
So I'm trying to line up like Sucrets or Chloroseptic or something as another sponsor because like we're going to need it with our sore throats afterwards. But
yeah,
it'll be fun.
I think so. Should be fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into our draft crushes here, Bailey. And most people probably read mine of Fab Five. I'm going to talk about mine a little bit later, but I'm going to let you start with some of yours because we'll start with the defensive guys first because defense wins championships and it's more fun to talk about defense, right?
Yeah.
But I've got to say, one of the guys that you had on your list, I think, is really, really good, and I like him a lot. His name is, say it,
Felix Enrique Uzoma.
Boom! You nailed it. Good job. From
Kansas State, K-State.
Kansas State. Yeah, there you go. Yep.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Felix. I think. What I don't think I realized until later after, watching him and learning a little more about him is he's young. He's really, really young. Yeah. I think he's 21 years old, coming into the league at 6'3", 255, a really, really ideal size for the position. and he has the production to back up where I think he's probably going to fall in the draft, which is pretty early. I know I've seen some round 1 grades. I've seen some round 3 grades. I think it's somewhere in that sweet spot in the middle. 19.5 sacks in the last 2 seasons, 8 forced fumbles. PFF had him at 89 pressures in the last 2 years. And, he has good bend. He's an immediate plug-and-play guy, which is interesting with what we just talked about, I think, with the Bucs edge rusher position because of the question marks there. If they needed to throw him into the fire as a rookie, I think he would be able to handle it pretty well. He got those sacks and turnovers over the last couple of years and really, really just a perfect outside the tackle guy. And the Bucs have been lacking. Not that they've been lacking. This past year they lacked production out of the edge rusher position. Not that it's happened in the past, but I think the last couple of years especially been lacking in turnovers and getting after the quarterback. Not the best this past year, and he could add some more size to him. I think he has the frame for it.
Yeah, he does.
But I think he's at a pretty good size as he has good bend. His athleticism and speed is good. I think just all around he is a pass rusher that I would love to see in that Bucs uniform and the creamsicle uniform at one point this year too. But,
that's right.
I'm sure I'm not telling you anything that you don't know about your own K-State Wildcat.
I do like him, and I would not mind one single bit if Felix Anudike-Uzomah ends up being a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. However, I'm not just beholden to Felix. There's a lot of edge rushers I like this year. Derek Hall from Auburn, Will Anderson Will McDonald. Yeah, Will Anderson. Sure, why not? Will McDonald.
19 would be good value for Will
That
Anderson.
would be tremendous value. If Jason Licht pulls that off, I mean, he's already got General Manager of the Year in the bag. Yeah. But no, Will McDonald from Iowa State, I think is also a tremendous fit for the Buccaneers and probably in the second round as well. So there's a lot of guys I like. I'm not going to just be zeroed in on Felix. But yeah, that's a strong start right there, Bailey. I'm going to give you props for that. So I do think Felix has got some upside. He is young, like you said. He's already 255. I think he probably tops out around 260, but probably a little bit more rocked up. Mm-hmm. Kansas State's strength conditioning program is not as robust as as you're going to find. I mean, if you put Derek Hall right next to Felix Anudike-Uzomah, one looks more like a football player than the other. Yeah. That would be Derek Hall. Not that muscles are everything, folks, because I mean this team's had their share of bodybuilder types that haven't amounted to anything. But I'm just saying that's a pretty good start. Speaking of rocked up, though, this guy right here, man, your second guy.
Yeah.
Sidney Brown.
Sidney Brown. It's funny because we'll spoil it a little bit as the next two guys are both from Illinois. But Sidney Brown at 5'10", 211 kind of has similar size, I'd say, to Antoine Winfield Jr. I think Antoine's right around that. I think more of a traditional safety. He's very physical, and he also was a playmaker. It's kind of the best of both worlds there. He had 10 career interceptions at Illinois. He had 6 last year.
Yeah.
And he's spent some time here and there, mostly in the box. I think he had 444 snaps playing in the box last year as opposed to 60 as a deep safety. Played the slot a little bit, 177 in the slot, and similar numbers in 2021. But I think the athleticism, the explosiveness, and it's kind of like an effortless explosiveness. It doesn't look like it's very fluid, I think, with the way he plays the game.
Yeah.
And I think it would make for a good pair. I think he could play a little bit more in the box as he did a little bit last year. And then Antoine's, I think, a really good center field type in the free safety role. But I think you can use both of them pretty interchangeably.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think, too, this is a player with a nose for the ball, very much like Winfield had a lot of picks in college.
Yeah.
Sidney Brown had 6 interceptions last year alone. And it's funny because you say that he gets most of his snaps in the box. A lot of the interceptions came with him actually playing cover 2, where he was one of the deeper safeties.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny that he's almost like you said, another version of Antoine Winfield. Imagine having 2 Antoine Winfield Juniors back there. That's pretty damn good.
I think if you ask Todd Bowles, he would love to have 11. I know not necessarily all of them being the same size as Antoine Winfield Jr., but I think he would like having 11 Antoines out there. But I do want to correct what I said. I think he played a lot in the box at Illinois. I don't know that he projects as well being just solely a box safety in the NFL. Yeah. But he's obviously shown that he's capable of playing in the box. But Yeah, I mean, I think a guy that probably is a early day 2 guy from what I've seen in a lot of the grades.
Yeah, well, I agree with you there. Felix, I'm down with. I'm down with Sidney Brown as well. So I think you're 2 for 2 as far
Okay.
as guys that I like. Let's see if Todd Bowles and Jason Light agree. Now, here's the thing too. They did interview Sidney Brown with a formal visit at the combine, and they did so the same thing with Felix, right? So these are 2 players that they met, had formal interviews with at the combine. So they're definitely on the Bucs radar for sure. And we think that these are 2 legitimate prospects. One or both of these guys could be on our Bucs best bet list. We're formulating that list right now. It'll change a little bit. Like people are changing their draft boards and NFL war rooms. We're changing our Bucs best bets depending on who comes in, and all that. And there's a report that Lucas Van Ness is at One Buck Place for a top 30 visit today. I don't think he's going to be there at number 19. And I'm not a huge fan, to be perfectly frank with you. I think he's a really good bull rusher. I think they already kind of have that player and maybe a less athletic version of Anthony Nelson. And I think they're looking for more speed. But it's interesting because the guys that they did not formally interview at the combine, they're bringing in for top 30 visits. Lucas Van Ness, Nolan Smith, B.J. Ojulari. Those guys did not have formal interviews with the Bucs at the combine, but yet they're bringing him in here. It's almost like they're kind of just doing their due diligence just to make sure that they, are. I'm not saying they're crossing these guys' names off, but it's 2 different lists, right? There's combine interviews, and then these guys they're bringing in are guys that they did not formally interview at the combine.
Yeah, and as we mentioned earlier, there were a lot of them they did interview at the combine, and maybe it's a case where, all right, we talked to these guys at the combine, and we've gotten what we basically need from talking to these guys. Don't necessarily need to spend one of our 30 visits on him. Let's bring in another guy we haven't done as much work directly with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, for sure. So, and then your third one, you kind of tipped us off. He's from Illinois as well. And we're talking about Quan Martin, who I really like.
That Illinois, you see Witherspoon there, that Illinois secondary was unreal, really. And you look at the prospects they have in this draft specifically, it kind of makes me wonder what they're going to look like this upcoming college football season with all those guys in the draft. But Quan Martin, longer, he's 5'11", 194. He is another guy that's a plug and play playing in the slot. I think
he's a slot safety, man. He is.
Really is. I know that's something Todd Bowles talked to us about in Indy was he doesn't want to play Antoine Winfield Jr. in the slot if he can help it. He wants to move him back to that safety position and leave him in one spot. And I think that safety position, as I think we've written and talked about since that press conference, is definitely where he is better off, staying in terms of Antoine Winfield Jr. But almost 1,000 snaps in the slot over the last 2 seasons, as opposed to only 136 in the box and 197 at deep safety. Another guy who's really smooth. He's got good ball skills, and he really, really lit it up at the combine. I mean, he was, and these testing, I don't like to put too much stock in the testing, but it's a good kind of gauge of where things are. He's a 4.46 40 was his third among safeties. His 10-yard split was tops. His 44-inch vertical was tops, and his 11-foot 1-inch broad jump was tops among safeties. So a guy that really, really showed out at the combine, I think raised his stock there, and you're seeing a little bit more about him in the lead up to the draft. And again, I think he's a day 2 guy, and another guy who I think I would place him in terms of crushes for the Bucs, especially specifically with the Bucs need. I would probably place Martin above Sidney Brown for right now.
But that's fair to say. Yeah, I mean, everything that I've heard is your starting safeties are going to be Winfield and Ryan Neal. I mean, they love Ryan Neal. He is a starting caliber safety. So I think the open vacancy now is that slot position. They need somebody to go in there in the slot and play like a cornerback, play like a third safety, and be that guy that can cover slot receivers, tight ends, that are flexed out, tight ends that are in line. That's really what they need. And I agree with you. I as much as I like Sidney Brown, if they were to get Quan Martin in the 3rd round, if Brown's gone in the 2nd, if they go offensive tackle, then edge rusher, and then safety, but it's someone like Quan Martin in third round, I'm fine with it. That's a win right there for the Buccaneers right off the bat.
Not having a current starting slot. I know, like, you might want to say maybe the slot corner isn't a starting position, but in the Bucs defense, it's essentially, one that it's maybe not starting. It's important. It's basically a starter if you're not saying he's
they're in nickel defense between 60 to 70% of the snaps the entire season. So, yeah, I mean, you're talking about, pretty much a full-time player, really.
Yeah.
In this day and age. Now, back in the 80s or 90s, you're on base defense at least half the time, if not probably 60% of the time. But the passing game has taken over. You're seeing more 3 and 4 wide receivers, and you're also seeing more tight ends like the Travis Kelce's, the George Kittles, those types of players that you really need a slot player, whether it's a safety or a cornerback, to cover those, because you only have maybe 2 athletic linebackers. Most teams don't have a third that can really get out there and cover and do those things. So in this day and age, you're in nickel more than you're not. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. So that would be one hell of an investment right there for the Buccaneers if they were to get a slot safety, slot corner like Quan Martin, otherwise known as Jartavius Martin. But he's going by Quan Martin. That would be a tremendous investment. And where you can make your investments work for you at Muni Financial, of course.
At Muni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Dude, congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you. And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you?
Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track, so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Muni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
That's right. Planning ahead and staying ahead. The Buccaneers are planning to have a big draft, and you can plan to have a big retirement. How about that? Managing your family's wealth means more to Muni Financial than simply allocating your assets. It means legacy planning, brokerage and advisory services, retirement accounts, college savings accounts, and insurance services. With 40 years of experience, not just in the Tampa Bay area, not just in Florida, but across the country. Let Muni Financial help you plan ahead and stay ahead. Give them a call at 1-800-868-6864 or visit them on the web at muni.com. All right, Bailey, let's get into your offensive crushes here. And you and I, we have one crossover guy, which we'll mention last. That's the tight end. So let's go with the guy that I was spending a lot of time watching on tape today, and a player that the Buccaneers have had in for a top 30 visit, and that is Texas's Roschon Johnson.
Yeah, Roschon, I think we kind of were figuring this out in the Pewter Report group chat. Maybe I was on Saturday. We all just kind of started talking about him as a prospect, and seemed like collectively we were all like, all right, he might be a consensus favorite of some of ours. But just I think the perfect complement to Rachaad White, and I think just the perfect kind of player and person that the Bucs look for in terms of who they draft. But he's definitely a power back. He's 6'2", around 220. I mentioned him a little bit on the last show I was on last Wednesday, because that was the day they brought him in, or that we found out they were bringing him in for that visit. But he had a 45% missed tackle rate forced over the last couple of years, just breaking tackles, and that was leading the country. And something that I think could end up playing to his advantage. Maybe it wasn't something that's going to play to his advantage in terms of draft stock, but he was stuck behind Bijan Robinson at Texas, obviously. So there's not a ton of wear and tear on Roschon Johnson. I think he was somewhere around, I don't remember exactly year by year what his carries were, but definitely a lesser workload given that Bijan was the go-to guy. But, I mean, he breaks tackles, he runs hard. Maybe not the fastest guy, doesn't have the breakaway speed, but I don't think, and to an extent of what the role that he would need to play is, he wouldn't need that breakaway speed for what the Bucs would need him for. But just it feels like something that he has a skill set that would complete the Bucs backfield. And what I mentioned with the character stuff is that being stuck behind a star running back like Bijan Robinson isn't easy, and I think especially with the transfer portal era that we're in, guys are transferring out all the time if they're not getting the snaps they think they should get.
Right.
But his coaches and even Bijan at the combine said that Roschon was the best teammate he's ever had. Steve Sarkisian, the Texas head coach, was raving about him at the end of last year. And if you look back to even before the start of last year, when they had the Big 12 media days, he was one of the representatives.
Yeah,
and he's not even their RB1. Yeah, right. You only take, I think, 3 guys for those media days. And so to have him there and peg him as one of your leaders, even though he is your RB2, it said a lot about, I think, who he was for that locker room and that program.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And the interesting thing is he was a former quarterback at Texas, and then he lost the job, and so he moved to running back. They really needed him when Bijan Robinson got hurt for most of the year a couple of years ago. And the funny thing is I watched every single catch and carry from 2021 and also 2022 today. And I started watching the 2021, and I'm familiar with them because I'm from Big 12 country. So I've seen him and Bijan destroy K-State a couple times. Glad they're out of there now. But actually, glad Texas is out of the Big 12 after this year. So I'm just going to say that. Yeah. Bye, Texas. Bye, Oklahoma. Welcome, UCF. Charge on. So, so Bailey's a Knight. I'm a Wildcat. So we're going to have fun little bets, not just in football, but basketball a couple times a year. So it'll be fun.
I was hoping to avoid basketball.
Yeah. But the thing with that is, so I'm watching Rashawn Johnson and I'm watching the 2021 film and I'm like, okay. Like, all right. Like, okay. That was a good run. Honestly, I thought his best carries came out of the Wildcat when he was getting the ball directly snapped from center. And so I watched the 2021 film. I was like, okay, like, all right, he's good back. And then I watched the 2022 back and wow, the difference. The growth in 1 year, right? Because this guy has not been playing running back very long. We're talking just a couple of years. But the growth, the moves, the stiff arm that he unleashes in 2022 with great regularity, it's incredible how much growth I saw on film. Again, like you said, it's a limited number of snaps because he's playing behind Bijan Robinson, who was healthy last year, right? So, but I mean, that stiff arm is lethal and wicked. And he's a strong dude. I think this is a guy that he can be a 1,000-yard back in the NFL. Probably not as a rookie. It's going to take him a little bit of time to continue to learn the position and to adjust. But listen, if the Buccaneers drafted him, I would not poo-poo that pick at all. I would be fine with it. The interesting thing, though, Bailey, is they'd have to essentially burn probably a 3rd-round pick on him. And they've drafted Rachaad White in the 3rd round. They drafted Keyshawn Vaughn in the 3rd round. They drafted Charles Sims back in the 3rd round. So if Jay Slant's going to draft a running back, it's going to be in the 3rd round. Like he's already put that out there. Yeah. Does this team need a running back in the 3rd round?
Probably not. That's where it gets kind of dicey because you look at a lot of the grades for him are even 4th round. A lot of people are saying 4th round. They don't have a 4th round pick.
That's right.
So it would either be something where they have to pick up picks somehow or pick up a later 3rd round pick, pick up a 4th round pick. Where they are in the 3rd round right now, I probably would prioritize another position.
Right.
But I guess just depending on the way the board falls, it all depends on that.
And if he's like, let's say they have a 2nd round grade on him, right? Let's say they love him. I mean, he might be the standout player on their board at that time if they're going best player available. So if they stick to your board, that's one thing. I just remember them drafting Keyshawn Vaughn in the 3rd round, and I was like, what? This guy's like a 4th or 5th round pick, but they didn't have a 4th round pick at that time. So
I remember saying in the group chat the other day that because like there's a ton of running backs that I like, there's probably going to be whoever they end up drafting. If they draft a running back, it's going to be someone that I'm just way off the board for me. Like not that I don't like them, but that's somebody that I didn't spend a lot of time crushing on in terms of the draft. And it's happened quite a few times now. In the Jason Light era. So if it happened again, I wouldn't be so surprised.
Exactly. Well, this guy right here, we're not talking Sidney Brown now. We're talking Muhammad Ibrahim from Minnesota. If they draft him in this, man, this guy is an absolute banger and a bruiser. And I think he's that type of angry runner they're looking for. He's not a splash guy. He's not a dash guy. He's more of a bash guy. But this guy could be a nice 1-2 punch if they don't go with Rashawn Johnson there. So let's carry on with not Jason Voorhees, because that would be from Friday the 13th. We're talking about Andrew Voorhees, but the similarity between Jason Voorhees and Andrew Voorhees is Jason Voorhees is dead and Andrew Voorhees' knee is dead right now. It's trying to make a comeback because Unfortunately, this guy, who was probably a second or third round pick, he was definitely going to be a day 2 guy at a USC, tore his ACL at the combine doing on-field positional drills, which was a shame. But the thing is he didn't just curl up and go home. He busted out 38 reps on the bench before he left the combine. So, he's strong, incredibly strong. Played, I think, 4 years there, maybe 5 years at USC.
I think he was there for 6 years. I lost you there
Yeah.
for a second, so I don't know if there was some kind of weird cutout, but I think he was there for 6 years.
Yeah. He's got a ton of experience, very good mover, strong, would be ideal for this Dave Canales West Coast offense, or not, I shouldn't say West Coast offense, but wide zone offense. They ran a lot of that at USC. I love the pick. Now, the thing is you're going to be investing a pick in a player who's literally going to be redshirting this year.
Yeah.
But this is a starting caliber guard, right? When he's healthy.
That's when I sent this over to you as one of my draft questions. I was like, if you need me to swap him out, I can. Because I don't know that the Bucs would necessarily are in a position to where they can make I guess what you would call a luxury pick given the injury situation. He's not going to play this year.
If he's there in the 5th round and you draft him in the 5th round,
yeah,
and you're getting a future starter there, like I don't have a problem if Jason Licht does that.
Right, and I think that would be almost. I think whoever gets him, especially if it's later like that, it's going to be a great value. It's going to be a steal. And I think you're looking at the Bucs. If they do that, it's this season they're piecing together their guard position with, whether it's Gedeke, Leverett, Hainsey, Stinney, whoever it is.
Yeah.
You piece it together this year. You figure that out. Maybe you find one who's going to be a longer term starter, and then next year you plug in Voorhees as the guy that's now fresh off of his injury and fully recovered from it.
Yep. Exactly. Let's get to a couple super chats before we round out your draft crushes here, Bailey.
Okay.
We have a couple to get to, which we love super chats, and we're going to bump those right to the front of the line. Let's do the first one first. And the first one comes from, let's see, I have it queued up here. Where did it go? There we go. From Spider-Man. What are your thoughts on Austin Hooper's comments stating that the Browns higher-ups made up comments about Baker being immature so they could get Deshaun Watson? Wouldn't surprise me one bit. The Browns are going to Brown, right? That's what bad franchises do.
Yeah.
But Jason Licht and his scouts did a thorough job. Rob McCartney, who heads up the pro personnel department, John Spytek, they talked with a lot of coaches at multiple stops that Baker had, from Carolina to LA last year, and of course with Cleveland. They said he was a great teammate. They said Baker Mayfield was a great teammate, no character issues, nothing like that. Very competitive guy, wants to win, good leader. So I think that backs up what Austin Hooper is saying, right?
Yeah, I missed these comments. I haven't really looked in. I haven't seen this yet, but I'll look into that later, I guess. But I would believe it because it did feel like there was some sort of smear campaign and things really soured there at the end there with Baker and the Browns. And yeah, they got in Deshaun Watson, and it was all right. See ya. But I've been very pro Baker, I think, since his Oklahoma days, and I know there was some, whatever you want to call him, immaturity, some of the taunting that he did. I personally thought it was.
I loved it.
I liked it,
especially when he grabbed his crotch against KU.
Yeah,
loved it.
Yeah,
I can't wait. I can't wait to relive that moment with Baker. I think we'll bond over that, our mutual hatred for KU. So.
I think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so even going back to that, it was nothing, that stood out to me. But I've always thought that some of this character stuff or some of the things that have been said about him have been overblown. And I think a lot of that had to do with the way that things ended with Cleveland. And it's just funny to see how that went because he got them back to the playoffs. I know it wasn't solely on him, but he got the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs and won a playoff game. And what was it, a year later, they were saying, bad teammate, whatever it is, let's get him out of here. So interesting.
Browns are going to Brown,
Yeah.
Solid Buccaneer, thanks for the super chat. We appreciate it. We stunk last year at running the ball. Sure, White had moments, but let's not act like he was Derrick Henry not being used early in his career by Vrabel. Fair point. Listen, Rachaad White will have a shot at the number one starting job, but he's got to earn it just like everybody has got to. And this team, they're going to get another running back. They also have signed Chase Edmonds. And the Keyshawn Vaughn's in a contract year. Watch out for guys in contract years. They have a lot to prove. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Buccaneers running game, based upon the scheme that Dave Canales is going to deploy, and the fact that these guys are chomping at the bit to make amends for last year when this team, A, didn't run the ball hardly at all, and B, when they did run it, it wasn't very effective. So trust me, from what I've heard from the running back room, that room is raring to go right now. They can't wait to get the pads on and really get after it this year.
Yeah, I don't want to say last year with the run game was a wash because it happened and the results were the results, but yeah. I think it's going to be a completely renewed sense of urgency and just overall the scheme. I think is going to be itself. It's going to be a huge improvement. I think you're going to see improvements from the running backs because of that. All
right, I want to say Surreo Southpaw won't allow me to super chat in Jamaica, which is stupid. So we appreciate the effort. And I'm not sure what the conversion rate would be in the Jamaican economy to America. But Mr. Southpaw, if you have a question, I'm happy to answer it here in the remaining 9 minutes we have. So
let us know who we need to talk to about getting super chats going in Jamaica.
Yeah, we'll get right on that. A couple of other things here too. Just a question from my Overland Park buddy, Christopher Oxentine. Scott, and I'm coming to Kansas City for the draft. No, I've actually never been to the NFL draft. We're so busy at One Buccaneer Place, otherwise known as the Advent Health Training Center, that I really don't have the luxury to go there. My daughter Ellie, who goes to K-State, she's wanting me to go to the draft this year in Kansas City, and I said, sorry, I'm working. I'd love to otherwise, but it's a big work weekend for me. My birthday is April 23rd. Thankfully, it's not on the draft this year. Sometimes it is, which makes for a very long birthday. But so I would love to. I'm excited that it's going to Kansas City though, because it's a fun football town. So I'm definitely excited about that. Another question here, Grace Point. When are the Bucs revealing their creamsicle throwbacks? Well, as soon as the schedule comes out, which will be probably the middle of May. And I love the fact too now, Bailey, that they are putting the schedule off until after the draft so they can find out which one of these teams get the franchise quarterbacks and kind of marry it up like that. Don't you agree?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I don't know. I can't remember when they started doing that. Do you know when they started doing that?
A couple years ago. I want to say it was Kyler Murray, his draft, I think.
Because they just so happened to have the luck of Jameis Winston versus Marcus Mariota back in 2014 or 2015. Yeah. Because that's just the way it panned out. I know they probably knew, this is the team with the number 1 pick versus the number 2 pick. So it worked out that way. But I definitely like it. And I think I'm always itching to right around this time of year. I'm like, can the schedule just come out? And I know, we got about another month to wait, but I'm ready for it.
Well, we're going to not wait anymore. We're not going to wait a second longer to get your final draft crush on the offensive side. A player that you and I both have a crush on, Josh Wiley from Cincinnati.
Yeah, and I know it's. I think this proves my lack of bias because I hate Cincinnati. I hate the University of Cincinnati as a UCF person, but no, I like good football players, and Josh Wiley is a good football player. The size obviously is what jumps out. He's 6'6.5", I think it is. Yeah. And just his touchdown production, he's just the perfect red zone threat. 15 touchdowns at Cincinnati, and that broke Brent Selleck's Cincinnati record. Yeah. And it's one of those things where he's lined up in the slot and in line. I think he uses his length fairly well as a blocker too. I think there's some drawbacks with his lower half, and he can get him in trouble. But I think he finds ways to win as a blocker. I think more so than anything, it's the pass catching and the red zone threat that he is.
And I think he's going to get a little bit bigger at the next level too, and fill out a little bit more. But he had a great Senior Bowl too. I mean, he's definitely one of those guys. If the Bucs can get him on day 3 in that 4th, 5th, I think he's gonna be gone by the 5th, later in the 5th round. But yeah, he's a player, man. You pair him with Cade Otton and Keith, and that tight end room is young, but it's got some talent.
Yeah, I mean, this tight end class I think is pretty deep, and we saw a lot of good tight ends at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, but he was one of them that stood out. And got to point out here that Houston, I don't know if it's a corner or safety, that where his mouthpiece is located, that really threw me off. That caught my eye, and I was like, first I was like, what is that?
Is it an antenna or what is it? It's his mouthpiece. Yeah.
Yeah, that threw me off.
Exactly. So here are mine real quick, because if you've read my SR's Fat 5, I went into detail. Wanted Bailey to kind of have the floor today to talk about his, but Wiley's also one of mine. I also like Hendon Hooker. I just think that there's something about this guy. The Bucs have had him in for a top 30 visit. I'm not saying they're going to draft him or not draft him, but there is some intrigue there with this guy. I like him better over Will Levis. I love the touchdown interception ratio. He's not a perfect product. Coming from that Josh Heupel offense, it's a lot of one look throws. Very quarterback friendly, but I like this player. I think that he's got some real upside too. Now the thing is I actually had Anton Harrison. I wrote about him. I wrote about Anton Harrison in my SR's Fab 5. Left tackle out of Oklahoma. This guy, what I like about him, Bailey, is you put him in as a day one left tackle. You leave Tristan Wirfs on the right side, right? And boom, all is right with the world. Okay. I think this guy can come in and be a plug and play left tackle. Now, that's not to say I don't like Darnell Wright. And after seeing the exchange today on Twitter, I'm going to have to go with Darnell Wright. Okay. If you missed it, and if you're offended, if you're easily offended, please turn away. Okay. Please mute your box here for a second. Because he went after a member of the Cincinnati media that does a podcast. His name is Willie Lutz. Darnell, this is actual like DM exchange here on Twitter. Darnell Wright is a pure right tackle and has no business playing left tackle, because Darnell Wright played right tackle his sophomore year, left tackle his junior year, and then right tackle his senior year. And Darnell says, you are a pure, and you can read it there. It starts with a D. What year did you play to say anything, or to say anybody has any business doing anything? So basically, that's what we have to put up with the media sometimes, is people say, well, when did you play football? Whatever. Okay, I get it. Now, apparently, Darnell kind of made up on Twitter, and he says probably a little heavy on the specific choice of words. Hey, I'm no choir boy, but this is when someone says I can't do something. It really grinds my gears, Willie Lutz. It's all good. You are probably actually defending me a bit. Appreciate that. Maybe we'll do a podcast in Cincy one day. I just like that. I like the start. I like the aggression, the I'm going to kick your ass, and then I like to finish the hey, listen, maybe we'll do a podcast one day. I like Darnell Wright. If the Buccaneers end up with Darnell Wright or Anton Harrison in the first round, I'll be a happy man, because I think both these offensive tackles can play. Heading to the defensive side now, Will McDonald from Iowa State is my draft crush. No offense to Felix Anudike-Uzomah. I love him because of his Wildcat roots. I've just seen Will McDonald destroy Kansas State and other teams in the Big 12 enough. I'm ready for him to leave and go to the NFL. And if it would be for the Buccaneers, all the better. I think they could use a big-time edge rusher like that. And then let's see. We're running out of time here, so I'll just get to another guy here real quick. Julius Brents from K-State. He is coming in for a top 30 visit. He texted me that on Saturday. We reported that on pewterreport.com. Big pterodactyl-type wingspan. I think he's got like 10-foot long arms, like Freddy Krueger, like in the alleyway scene from the old Nightmare on Elm Street. Perfect Todd Bowles type corner, 6'3", 198 pounds, 4 interceptions last year, arrow pointing up with this guy. And I like what he brings to the table. Todd Bowles was at the K-State Pro Day and obviously likes Brents enough to bring him in for a visit. Teddy says, being a Bucs fan on Twitter is accepting the fact that the Pewter Report account is also a K-State account. Well, if you count up all the tweets that we do, I think you will find 99.9% of them are on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and 0.01% of them are on the Kansas State Wildcats. That's just how it is. I run the show, and I don't have my own Twitter account. So the few times during football and basketball season, I'll throw a little K-State love out there. I'll do it. But so those are my draft crushes. Your thoughts, Bailey, real quick before you?
Brents, especially for where he's going to get drafted, I think would be a slam dunk. Where he is, But and then the same thing, if Will McDonald is another one who I want to watch more of, because I've seen a little bit, and what I've seen I've liked. And as we talked earlier about the edge rushers, I think there are a number of edge rushers that they've talked to, a number of edge rushers that they could bring in, who would be really, really beneficial to add to that room.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like those.
So here's Southpaws. I guess this is your super chat question. Who do I like more, Darnell Wright or Anton Harrison? I probably would give the edge to Harrison, just because I don't have to wonder about Tristan Wirfs playing left tackle, right? If that makes sense. Is I know that Tristan Wirfs is an all-pro, Pro Bowl right tackle. I think he could be that on the left side, but I don't have to try to find out now. Harrison's the left tackle. So just based on the positional, need, the hierarchy of left tackle being a little bit more important than the right tackle because you're protecting the blind side of a right-handed quarterback, I'd probably say Harrison. But again, I'm a big Darnell Wright fan, and I can see the logic there. And also, too, Wright has played some left tackle, so he does have that positional flexibility, too. So I would say either one of those guys would be quite dominant on this Buccaneer offensive line. Yes, Will McDonald is a freak, no doubt about it. Let's see here. We have another. What is this? This is from someone named Joshua Capo. 5% of the PR tweets are USF hate by way of UCF love. Shake my damn head. That's true. Charge on.
Who's Josh Capo?
I don't know. He sounds familiar. He wrote the article about Shaq Barrett.
Oh, that was on pewterreport.com?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's one of our writers. Yeah.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
So
we love you, Josh. All right, folks, before we get out of here, no fancy schmancy segue. I'm just going to hit play on the age rejuvenation commercial right now.
As we age, our hormones decrease, both for men and women.
I was tired all the time, had no sex drive.
I was groggy.
I felt like I was 80 years old because everything hurt.
I came to age rejuvenation because I was tired all the time.
Bioidentical hormones has really made such an impact in people's lives.
I actually enjoy shopping now.
Got all my energy back.
Mind is sharp.
I feel like I'm 18 again.
It was perfect for me.
Get with age rejuvenation. Do it now. Don't wait.
Call Age Rejuvenation today.
That's right, folks. Age rejuvenation. If you want more performance in the weight room, or just more performance in your life, period. If you're getting older and you feel like you're getting a little bit sluggish and your mental acuity is slipping, it might be a sign of low testosterone. Go to agerejuvenation.com. Sign up for a free consultation today. Get your testosterone checked. Your insurance will pay for it. Get the blood work done. Can't recommend it enough. Age Rejuvenation, I'm a customer, and they've got 5 Tampa Bay area locations to serve you. Some great specials that they're running right now. Peptides, testosterone therapy, all of that. So Age Rejuvenation, folks, it's the place to be. And if you're looking for a place to go for all of your Bucs news and information, pewterreport.com, best Bucs coverage, breaking news, inside scoop, game day coverage, expert analysis. Oh, what's that right there? Free agency and draft coverage. That's right. That's where we specialize. Folks, make sure you're following us on social media at Pewter Report with Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and on our YouTube channel, Pewter Report TV. That's where you're watching this program. And we appreciate everybody who does. And we want you to like every video that we do. The more you like and the more subscribers we get, the better it is, because it helps our algorithm and gets our content in front of more awesome Pewter people like you guys. So this is a fun show, man. I really appreciate you hanging with me today, Bailey. Again, prayers to Matt Matera for the loss of his pop-up, and to the Matera family.
Yeah, it's been fun. Just in our thoughts to Matt, and glad we could cover for him today, and hope he can spend some time with his family up there.
Absolutely. Yep, you got it. For Bailey Adams, I'm Scott Reynolds saying we'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. on Tuesday for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast.